Inviting on stage our distinguished session chair, Shri Vijay Christopher. He is the wireless advisor to the Government of India and Chairman India National Preparatory Committee, NPC 23 for WRC 23. And I would request Shri Jitendra Singh, Vice President IAFI and Senior Director Qualcomm, to kindly welcome our distinguished guest with a floral bouquet. I would request Shri Jitendra Singh ji to welcome Shri Vijay Christopher with a floral bouquet. A very warm welcome to you, sir. I also invite on stage for this session eminent speakers, Shri Sachin Kumar, Assistant Wireless Advisor, WPC. Very warm welcome. Dr. Stuart Cook, Chair, GSA Global Spectrum Team. Warm welcome to you, sir. And Dr. Hakan Che Olsen, he is the Director at Ericsson Group Function and Vice Chair, WP5D, SD. Warm welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, eminent speaker, Dr. KGV, Chairman Asia Pacific Group for WRC 23 Preparations, Korea, is joining us virtually. We also warmly welcome you, sir. So ladies and gentlemen, the topic for this session is WRC 23, the key issues, challenges and opportunities, and how WRC 23 preparatory process is progressing. The time duration for the session is approximately 50 minutes, which includes the opening and closing remarks by our distinguished chairperson and presentations or deliberations or addresses by all our eminent speakers for approximately 10 minutes each. For the benefit of our speakers, we have a timer in front of you on the screens, which will go off in 10 minutes. You are kindly requested to conclude your addresses or presentations in 10 minutes only due to the constraint of time. And ladies and gentlemen, we will have question and answers in the end only if the time permits. And before I hand over to our chairperson, a few words of introduction. Shri Vijay Christopher, a wireless advisor to the Government of India and Chairman, India National Preparatory Committee for WRC 23. Before joining as the wireless advisor, he was the director of the Wireless Monitoring Organization of the WPC. With an experience of spectrum management, he worked at the ministry in different divisions and has also played an active role in the spectrum auction held in 2016. And now I invite Shri Vijay Christopher, our distinguished chairperson.
As well as the delegates attending remotely. A very good morning, good afternoon. I'm very honored to be present here today and participate in this second Indian Spectrum Management Conference 23. So this is the right time to discuss about the issues and other things related to the WRC. Spectrum has become a very common term used these days, which was earlier in layman terms we used to say airwaves. So the spectrum is an intangible resource which we can imagine only we associate with some applications or equipments or anything, because we can't see the spectrum by our naked eye. But the importance of spectrum has been appreciated by everybody, how it contributes to the economy, how it contributes to the nation, how it contributes to the development of technology, R&D, and everything. The spectrum has become a very important resource these days. So now let us come to WRC. WRC is one of the most important conference in the ITU calendar, which is convened every 4 years, where all its members countries come together to decide the new regulatory regime in the field of radio communication. The radio regulations formulated post the WRC determines the new standards in the allocation and use of different frequency bands for different applications. WRC 23 will be a challenging and demanding conference with focus on many issues in terrestrial, satellite and other regulatory, including additional spectrum for IMT, high altitude platform stations, regulatory provisions for suborbital vehicles, commercial aviation safety, global maritime distress and safety system, GSO and non-GSO Earth Station in motion, narrowband mobile satellite system, and many more. Last WRC 19 was a resounding success. It was one of the biggest conferences in ITU with over 3,400 participants representing 163 member countries and 129 organizations. WRC 19 was a major milestone in the development of radio regulations and opened the path for the introduction of new technologies. 5G is here because of WRC 19. In particular, we have identified additional frequencies for 5G in the millimeter wave bands also. I am happy to say that the Indian delegation to WRC played a critical role in achieving a breakthrough in deciding the millimeter wave bands for 5G. Ladies and gentlemen, moving ahead to the WRC 23, I hope that the outcomes of WRC 23 will accelerate the digital transformation throughout the world. I'm happy to note that there are several important agenda items, including a global identification of the band 7025-7125 megahertz for IMT, that is 100 megahertz, is a universal identification for IMT. Then there is HAPS platform, IMT base stations, satellite usage to support aeronautical VHF communication, introduction of additional satellite system into the GMDSS, etc. At the same time, it is important to recognize that the interest of the Asia-Pacific region to go beyond these topics and include the deliberations of other regions as those may also impact our country. One of the important bands to be considered by WRC 23 is the C band, which is being considered in some countries for the deployment of 5G systems, but is used in India by satellite system due to its coverage and propagation characteristics also. Moreover, the 6 gigahertz band is also being studied as a licensed XM band. I am also happy to note that APT preparatory work activities for WRC 23 are progressing well. APT has been playing a key role for the success of the Asia-Pacific region at major ITU conferences. APT has always been working harmoniously as a close family, showing mutual respect and accommodation in all our activities. Since its inception in 1996, which is led by Mr. R.N. Agarwal, our previous wireless advisor, APT has been providing a platform for regional coordination of WRC preparations, known as APG. Over the years, APG has progressed well into a vibrant program of APT, providing valuable contribution to the WRC. The popularity of the APG is a testimony of the importance of Asia-Pacific region attached to the radio communication issues and the WRCs. I would like to conclude my remarks by reassuring you that the WPC wing is committed to support all users and services in our national preparation for WRC 23 and various preparatory meetings. This was also given by our DGT in the morning session. We have already started our preparation for the forthcoming 5th meeting of the APG, and we will take note of the expert presentations in today's workshop for our national preparations. We are looking forward to this session in which some important eminent speakers are going to present their views of the preparation for WRC 23, which will certainly going to help WRC in this regard. Thank you. 5 speakers who will be talking about the preparations of WRC. First, we have Dr. V, Chairman of APG, WRC 23 preparation, Korea. He will be on remote, and I will invite him to make his presentation in this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm very honored to be here, even remotely. And I'm also sorry that I'm not making my availability to be there today due to the other engagement in the Geneva and also Thailand. However, I'm very delighted to say a few words to convey how the Asia Pacific region has been preparing for the WRC 23. I sent some slide decks for your considerations, and it includes almost 90 pages, but those informations, I hope that you can grasp all informations which is made by the APG, which is the name of the APT WRC Preparatory Group. And I will say a few words among those 90 pages slide. And first, I believe that all participants in this conference understand what is the WRC and what is the radio regulations and how it would work. So I try to skip that, but in this next slide, please. And yes, this slide shows the 3 regions by the radio regulations. So in the radio regulations, Asia Pacific is called Region 3. It looks small, but actually geographically, the Region 3 is most biggest regions among 3 regions. And the Region 1, Region 2, Region 3 is sometimes by the radio regulations allocate their own service independently. So there is some flexibility how we use the radio spectrums. And the next slide. In the next slide, the left side, you can see there are 6 regional groups, while the radio regulation allocate 3 regions, but APT represents almost Region 3 all, and the ASMG is the Arab group, AQ is the African group, CPT is a European group, CTEL is a South North American group, and the RCC is Russia and neighboring country, that group. The WRC decision-making process is made through the contribution from these 6 regional harmonized views. Of course, individually, every member state has a right to contribute individually during the WRC. That WRC can consider all inputs. However, recently, more than 20 years, those regional group contributions facilitate the decision of the WRCs. Let's go to the next slide. In the next slide, right, the left and the lower part I highlighted the yellow box and with the red colors, and which is we are ready here. We are in here. And the next year, March, we will meet in the CPM second, which means we almost finished the ITR study. And then with that, we discuss the study results during the CPM. After that, next year, November, we will meet in the WRC to discuss based on the inputs. And the next slide. Right. While the other part of the slides provide exact informations what APT has provided, what is the APT preliminary views up to date. APG meetings, last meeting, August, we updated the APT preliminary view. This is the formal position of the APT members' view collectively. And also, if you see that the APG preliminary review document, you can see the summary of the discussions. So this part, I believe it is also important part because besides the APT preliminary review, it provides additional issues on how APT members currently consider WRC agenda item. And more importantly, it also is the preparation of the members for the next APG meeting, which will be held in the February in Korea. And we have revised the APG working method. With that, we introduced the gender neutral words in the APT working method. Also, it is very important point that we establish a new process for responding dynamic coordination with the other regional group during the WRC. It is very important, more than important that input contribution because all different views from the different regional groups, we have to negotiate, we have to harmonize. So dynamic coordination is really important during the WRC. With that, I believe that this kind of the occasions organized by the ITU, APT foundations to gather the all stakeholders from the industry, from the operators, collecting the views and convey the message to the government. For that, the government can decide what is the best policy for India. And that process also applies to all other countries in Asia-Pacific area. With that, I leave the other slides for your consideration, individual considerations. And if you have any questions, I'm ready to happy to discuss with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Presentations.
Thank you, Dr. V. It was a short but very crisp presentation on the APT process. So thank you very much for joining in this conference. Now I will invite the next speaker, Mr. Jitendra Singh. He is Vice President of ITU APT Foundation and Senior Director, Qualcomm. He will be presenting a presentation on preparatory activities for WRC 23 from India's perspective. Mr. Jitendra, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to everyone. It's my privilege to be here in this conference, which is now focused and which is actually very timely to focus on WRC activities because next year at the same time we will be in WRC. So there is not even 365 days left for WRC. So I think this is the right time to actually focus on these activities. So my focus will be more on the preparation of WRC at national level. What is it that we need to do and how we need to actually, as India, need to take this forward for WRC. So Dr. V explained that how we are in APG level, what we are doing and what are the process for WRC in ITUR. What I am showing you here is in a different format, same thing, but at national level, we need to understand that where we are at this point of time, and we at APT level, at what level we are. So just to show that part, we have gone through a series of actions till now in last 4 years, or last 3 years. And next major activity will be CPM 23-2 meeting or conference, which will be somewhere in around March, April time frame. In Asia Pacific point of view, we have already gone through 4 meetings. 5th meeting is coming in February, and we need to focus on that because that is the first major activity for us towards WRC related work. So in India, we already have a process in place, and we have a National Preparatory Committee, also known as NPC, and we have Shri Christopher Ji as chairman of that committee. We also have various working groups as per the chapters of CPM report, and we have working group 1, working group 2, 3, 4, 5 dealing with various chapters and topics in those agenda items in those chapters. We have Mr. Alawa as working group 1 chair, Revati madam as working group 2 chair, and others also there for handling these important chapters. So just to show you that what has happened till now, we had working group 1 last meeting, which was on 2nd June 22, while preparing for last APG meeting. We have certain agenda items, and this is the view which was sent from India to APG. I am not going into details of any of these because this is something which we need to continuously evolve through and work and see how best we can do for Indian requirements. This was working group 2, which was on aeronautical and maritime issues. Last meeting was on 27th May. There were 3 agenda items where we did not have any view to APG. So agenda item 1.6, 1.8 and 1.11, we did not have any view. So maybe now is the time that we can work on this and prepare our views on these agenda items. Similarly, on working group 3, which is science issues, there were certain views which we had, important views. So if you see all those views, and if you observe that we were supporting all these studies in these various views from India point of view, but that was something which we were required to do at that point of time, but now as things have moved forward, we need to do more work on these. So again, here also we see agenda item 1.15, which we felt was an important agenda. We did not have a view, and similarly on agenda item 7, there was no view from India. And coming to the important group, which is working group 5 on general issues. So we had one meeting on July 2022, that was the last meeting on this. We do not have any views from agenda item 10, which is the futuristic requirement or new agenda items for the next WRC. So as industry, which is important stakeholders, especially mobile industry, is looking towards for having some agenda item towards meeting the future requirements. In other words, which we call IMD 2030 or 6G. So we are also looking for that. So maybe this is something which we can consider now. So overall, if I just put everything in one place, you will see these are various agenda items which we can see here, various resolutions, associated resolutions, then which are responsible groups in ITUR or in APG, and then what is the national level responsibilities and who needs to coordinate this. So this is something which I felt that is important for us to understand, and so that we can take this forward from here. We have draft CPM text available now, which is more than 900 pages document, and I only could go once very quickly through the document. It is huge document and we have to work on that document to come to our views for the next APG meeting, because that is where as Asia Pacific, as a regional level, we will create some views to support certain methods. As what you see here is different chapters which sorry for that. So different chapters we had different chapters and different methods for different chapters, and those chapters and those methods we need to study in detail. We need to understand each implication of each method, how it is going to help us as we move forward and prepare for the APG and CPM and then to WRC work. So this chart actually shows that what different meetings we had and what are the important meetings which we are going to have in following year, and we have Working Party 5D meeting, then APG meeting, and then we come to CPM 23, second meeting of CPM 23, and then other Working Party meetings. So this is the only time which is left with us, and we need to actually start getting into more details and more work in this. So these are various important meetings which we need to actually focus on. There are other meetings also, but this is the key for NPC to actually focus and start preparing for these meetings. We recently had the second ITU, our international workshop in Geneva earlier this month, and happy to see that we had good participation from WPC in this, which will help us in their guidance to actually NPC to move forward. Coming to overall process of NPC, which I feel as important stakeholder and being working in this field for more than a decade at least. So I feel that since spectrum is a force multiplier, we need, for India point of view, we need to think and act differently as what we have been doing earlier. We need to start, because spectrum is something where which is having a long-term impact on entire strategy or entire planning of the country. So ITUR is important for that factor, because whatever gets agreed in WRC becomes international treaties. So we need to be sure about that we respect those treaties, so we work in preparation for those treaties. Similarly, whatever decisions will be taken in WRC will have impact on our strategic planning and also on economic growth. So rapid increase of data, we know that how it is increasing, the usage of data is increasing, so that means we need more spectrum for different type of scenarios. Not only that we need it for terrestrial usages, we also require for satellite usages and different combination of usages. So that is important requirement. So WRC becomes important for us for that. Similarly, ICT growth, government and national stakeholders, they should be part of this whole planning activity. And we also should see how different countries are actually working on it, how they are planning, and we have seen this happening earlier also, in past also, that how countries actually form their core committees much well in advance, maybe about a year prior to WRC, and that committee actually takes the whole thing through WRC. So we should not wait for the last day, we should start now. It is already too late in terms of overall planning for each and every agenda item. And importance is that now, henceforth, for participation, we should have core team which should be participating in all these meetings throughout, so as to ensure that they know what is being done, what is happening, how studies are being followed, and that core team should also be there, therefore accountable and responsible for this entire activity. So there's a need to create a national core team for the remaining 1 year, at least, for having this entire activity done. So we should be very clear that for each agenda item, what is our strategy, whether we are supporting, not supporting, are we going to use that agenda item for negotiation purposes, that clarity is required. And then we should also focus on the next cycle, where we need to see whether we can, in various, at APG level, at ITUR level, can we get into various leadership role as India, because we have seen some growth this year, this cycle. Next cycle we should have more leadership in these meetings. And that can happen only once we have proper process in place. And my suggestion is that we have a core team here, which is basically of all NPC chairs and all working group chairs, and industry experts which prepare and work on these activities and provide to core team which takes care of this and takes it to the approval for DCC in case required in certain cases, because there will be issues where we have other stakeholders, government stakeholders who are also playing important role. So all these should be controlled here, and that is the one who should be responsible for feeding in contributions to APGs and to WRC to CPM. So if we can follow this process, I think we will have a good outcome for India in WRC. So with that, thank you very much.
About the NPC and its working groups and sub-working groups, and what are the way forward for the NPC to catch up with the WRC. He has emphasized the multiplier effect of spectrum, how it contributes the ICT growth, etc., etc. He has covered in details, and I thank him for giving such suggestions. We, as part of NPC, we will take this forward. Thank you very much. Now next, we have Dr. Stuart Cook. He is the Spectrum Head, Global Mobile Suppliers Association. He will be speaking about global preparatory activities for WRC 23.
This one is forward.
We could go to the next slide. I don't know how much you know about the GSA. We're the mobile vendor-led organisation, not to be confused with the GSMA, the operator-led organisation. So we have global teams in Spectrum, both regional and global, but we think it's really important that we cooperate with local teams such as the ITU APT Forum, the COAI, for example. So please do take a look at the GSA website. There's various membership categories. There's a lot of information that you can get access to. As I said this morning, the ITU had an original vision for IMT, that we would connect everyone with a mobile device. And that vision is now expanded to connect everything as well as everyone. And so, in terms of the WRC 23, I think it's very important that we look back towards that original vision and what were the tenets of that. So global harmonization of spectrum, we would say, remains really important for the wireless communications technology and its commercial success. So harmonization of spectrum, but it's not just about spectrum, it's about a global standard as well. All of the companies, organizations, regional standards bodies contributing into that global standard, so we continue to leverage what's there as we continue to enhance 5G and begin to prepare for 6G. So spectrum harmonization around standards, around timing. So timing is very important for a new technology. So we have seen in the past a number of countries want to be early leaders in technology. So I think as well as the standards, the regulation, it's really important that we are successful commercially. And I'm very proud that we're part of a commercially successful technology. So this is the agenda items that are related to IMT, International Mobile Telecommunications, commonly known as 4G, 5G, and in the future 6G. So we have the WRC 23 coming up, and we've heard about the processes for that. That has various agenda items. And you can see here, as explained earlier, we have 3 regions. So you can see the agenda items that are related to each of the regions. And so we have a UHF agenda item for Region 1. And so the UHF agenda item is quite controversial in some parts of the world. The broadcasting community are concerned. The program making special events community, they have a lot of developments there. So those are factors that need to be considered. But as an industry association, it's important that we give future flexibility to the regulators to enable the future option for mobile technologies. So what we call a co-primary mobile allocation would provide that future option. And an IMT identification, it helps with the harmonization. So that's a Region 1 issue. But in terms of the global ecosystem, that's really important, how we get that ecosystem around the world so that maybe, for example, 600 megahertz equipment, we can generate economies of scale which help all regions. And so the majority of the agenda items are related to that mid-band spectrum. Remember the low, the mid, and the high bands. The mid-bands providing a great coverage and capacity sweet spot, if you like. So we talked about in the morning initial deployments. So lots of administrations around the world have now licensed 5G spectrum for initial deployments. But now the discussion is about that expansion. So the expansion bands to enable the ongoing commercial success and growth of 5G. So those agenda items that you see there, in my mind, are in the context of growth of the ecosystem. So the expansion spectrum is related to some of the agenda items, but also in some regions, they would benefit from some of those agenda items to enable initial deployments. And so where is that mid-band expansion spectrum coming from? Lots of discussions around the world. Is it within 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz as an example? Some regions are planning to make that band available for expansion. Is it within 4.4 to 5 gigahertz? Again, some regions are thinking about that in terms of expansion. Is it the 6 gigahertz spectrum? Quite a contentious issue within the industry and within regulators, different opinions around the world. Some think that should be for license exempt technologies. Some think it should be for IMT technologies. Some think we should split it for some in the lower licensed exempt, in the upper 5G, future 6G. So 6 gigahertz is one of the options that is being considered around the world. And then the 10 gigahertz band. Lots of discussions in the CTEL region that we heard about in previous presentations. So some of the administrations think that 10 gigahertz is an option for that particular region. So we have the agenda items here, and so this is our views as an industry association. Some of those are not directly relevant to this region, but I would urge you to think about that in terms of that global ecosystem and that expansion spectrum. And then Jitendra mentioned the agenda item 10. So remember, spectrum takes a long time to discuss, make available, release into the market. And so I think we have sessions later on to talk about the future, but the WRC 27, we would propose an agenda item for IMT to support IMT 2030. So to wrap up then, let's have a look at those agenda items. Let's place that in the context of planning for future success in terms of expansion spectrum. And then in the very long term, let's start thinking about 6G and IMT 2030 and maybe the part that India wants to play in that discussion and development. Thank you very much.
The mid-band spectrum, and how can we bring forth the economies of scale by having a global harmonization and standardization in the mid-band. Thank you very much. Now we will go to the fourth speaker. We have Sri Sachin Kumar, Assistant Wireless Advisor from WPC. He will speak of India's national preparations for WRC 23, which will give an inside what is happening in WPC. He will give an idea.
Good afternoon, representatives from the government, senior officers from the Department of Telecom, leaders from the industry, academia, R&D organizations, and distinguished guests. I have a short presentation to make on how the preparations are going on for WRC 23. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So I'll be just briefing on the importance of national studies, the work done by the National Preparatory Committee, which some of the previous speaker has already given a glimpse, because in our National Preparatory Committee, it is a mix of stakeholders from the government, industry, and academia. And then I'll talk about the regional harmonization, importance, and the ITUR timeline. So why national studies are important? Because these agenda items, ITUR takes a cycle of 4 years to study these agenda items on the basis of technical, operational, and regulatory measures, and to find out solutions. So how new services and applications can be given some part of spectrum where existing users are already there. So that's the kind of challenge why such time is required. So the first priority comes where protection of the existing users, where we are having important services running on that spectrum band, and we have to chalk out a new frequency for the new ones. Like in WRC 19, there was a lot of challenge where the higher bands, the millimeter wave in 26 and 40 gigahertz, and there to protect the incumbent services, especially the satellite services, some technical measures like introduction of power limits had to be introduced. So this is the one aspect important to be considered in the studies. Second aspect is accommodation of new applications. As we are all aware that this is a fast changing world, and in the wireless communications, it's further faster. So new applications are emerging where companies, users, and governments are finding spaces to accommodate them and to take the services and the benefits to the public. Like in WRC 19, we were having spectrum, additional spectrum for the Earth station motion, for high altitude platform stations, and the most important what we are seeing nowadays is regulatory procedures for the non-GSO mega constellations, because that's a new coming field where we are not very much aware that what kind of benefits and services will be available. The third point is when that's a normal course in most WRCs, what we are facing, that requirements of spectrum for the terrestrial services and the satellite services. So this is the place where we require more and more studies, more and more inputs from the industry, from the academia, so that a collaborative decision can be made. And the same process is applicable both in the place, finding the position for the national views, and then regional views, and then to the WRC. So new regulations. So as and when what we see in WRC 23, there are new agenda items which my previous speakers have already spoken, that we are finding spectrum for expansion of 5G, for bringing new spectrum for the upcoming IMT 2030, which is generally known as 6G. So it is a collaborative effort of all the major corporations who are working in this field to study this matter and provide inputs that how these agenda items can be satisfied. As we are aware that now CPM report, draft report is available, and it's a long 900 pages report. So there are a number of methods and options to satisfy these agenda items. Like for example, in the agenda item 1.2, for the 6 gigahertz band, there are more than 18 studies submitted by different members, administrations, and corporations. So all these 18 studies are having some different assumptions and a different kind of results. So that's a kind of challenging situation in front of our NPC and their working groups to have a look on these studies, to delve deeper into them and find out the regulatory solution. So this is the structure of National Preparatory Committee which we are following. We have 5 working groups on the lines of the CPM chapters. So each working group is allocated agenda items corresponding to the CPM chapters. So, and these working groups and entire NPC is functioning with the stakeholders. And stakeholders, each month or week, we are also adding new stakeholders. So lastly, we have made some efforts to add our startups, new startups which are coming. So they also have a role to say, but they are not very experienced in the WRC process or agenda items. So a hand-holding is required for the startup companies. So that is an invitation to these startups. They can also come forward and reach to us to be a part and member of this NPC. So National Preparatory Committee is making recommendations, and then in the ministry it is getting approved, and finally they are submitted to the ITU and APT meetings. Secondly, this is the structure of NPC. I think earlier speaker have already displayed that 5 working groups are chaired by the well-experienced officers of the WPC wing of the Ministry of Communications, who are highly experienced in addressing these challenging agenda items of the WRC 23. So each working group is calling separate meetings of the stakeholders, and sometimes the meetings are in parallel also, and we receive that meetings are overlapping. But not to say, as we don't have so much time for the preparation of WRC. So time is very short, and we have a next APG and CPM2 meeting coming for us to prepare our national views. So these are some of the basic responsibilities of the National Preparatory Committee, where we have to consider the existing users, future interests, keep into mind the ITU radio regulations, the ITU reports and recommendations, and the most important, the ITU studies, which are now in the form of CPM report. And we also take into account all the input contributions submitted by our stakeholders, and which are discussed at first at the working group level and then at the NPC level. So it's a 2-tier, very good process where all the stakeholders get ample time to represent their views. And finally, these recommendations are submitted to the department. So we started with APG 23.1 somewhere during the COVID period, where mostly the structure of APG was forming, and we got a position as a co-chair in the Working Party 4 of satellite issues. Mr. Mrunmayya Patnaik is a co-chair in APT. Then during the APT second and third meetings, a lot of Indian delegation participated in the meetings, but a lot of contributions couldn't be made. Finally, in the APG fourth meeting, in most of the agenda items of WRC. Contributions were made to all the 5 working parties of APG on these agenda items, which include fixed and mobile broadcasting issues, aeronautical maritime, science, satellite issues, and general issues. But still a lot of work has to be done for the next APG 5 meeting. So this is the work plan of NPC for the coming year, where we have planned that with the availability of draft CPM report, NPC and its working groups will hold meeting with the stakeholders in a time-bound manner, and they will come out with the recommendations on the draft CPM report, and then we will have our recommendations for the APG 5th meeting, which is scheduled in the February in Busan, Republic of Korea. And then after this APG meeting, there will be a CPM 2 meeting, which is scheduled in March, April. And to this CPM 2 meeting, will be finalizing the draft CPM report, and as an outcome, this CPM report will act as a major input document for the WRC 23. Then we have planned our work for APG 6, and after APG 6, there will be Indian views have to be submitted on the preliminary APT common proposals, in which there is a process where number of countries have to agree on a common proposal, and this common proposal carries a lot of strength as a APT regional organization during WRC. And then separately, Indian contributions to WRC will be prepared before the WRC 23. So this is a glimpse of a number of stakeholders which are involved in the NPC discussions. So we have government bodies, all the important departments. We have tried to incorporate mostly the associations, because we cannot cover each and every company, but these associations are representing a very large group of stakeholders, both in the satellite and the terrestrial groups. And then we are having manufacturers, service providers, standardization bodies, academia, amateur services, and any other expert member views are also welcome in the NPC meetings. So what is our approach? So in India, we are doing our NPC activities, and we are preparing for our Indian views. And side by side, we are also looking on the views what the other member countries of our region, what kind of views they are preparing during the APT meetings. And we are also, during the APT meetings, we are making an effort for the regional harmonization, because this harmonization of views within APT is important, as it carries a good weightage during the WRCs. So I think APG is already explained by the chair, Dr. V, in this session. So I would say the one most important point that in these agenda items, there are some of the agenda items which pertain to the other region, region 1 or region 2, which do not pertain to the APT region. But still, these agenda items are important for our region in some or the other manner. We need to look upon the frequency bands, what is being considered by these big regional groups. So I think you've seen this slide just to show that we have finished the second workshop, interregional workshop on WRC 23, recently organized at Geneva, where all the 6 regional organizations, they deliberated and discussed their different approaches in these agenda items. And it took 3 days just for all the 6 regional organizations to mention about their views. It could not be discussed in detail even in the 3 days, because there are 40 standing agenda items. So I finish my presentation with this to note the important events. Basically, these are not the events, these are targets before us. And I hope with the collaboration of all the stakeholders, we will be able to achieve these targets successfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachin. He has covered in details about the NPC preparations and other things. In this juncture, he has already said that CPM draft report has come. I think it is time for all the stakeholders to analyze and come forward and attend the meetings of these sub-working groups to have the, views, because we are short of time. We have CPM meeting is coming in March, April. So this is the right time to come and collaborate in these meetings and participate and give the contribution appropriately, not only in IMT or any other issues that is interesting to the industry. Now we have the last but not the least speaker, Dr. Heiken. He is the Vice Chairman of Working Party 5D. Working Party 5D is the nodal group for IMT. And he is the Director of Ericsson also. He will speak on the ITR activities in preparation for WRC 23. Dr. Heiken.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction and for the invitation to. Many of you know that India is very special to me. Growing up, spending my childhood 6 years in Tamil Nadu, in Tirupattur, and in Kodaikanal. So I'm very happy to be back to India. So the WRC 23, that will be about 470 megahertz to 10.5 gigahertz. So it will cover both coverage, remote coverage, and capacity. And it's a key conference for the expansion, as my colleague Dr. Stuart Cook has expressed. To start with, the radio assembly. Last meeting in Working Party 5D, we agreed on a new name for IMT for 2030 and beyond. That is the Resolution 56. And the name now is IMT 2030. Not a big surprise to many, perhaps. But what also is required, this is the naming resolution. Then we still are working on the Resolution 65, which describes the process that we are going to have from the WRC 23 up to the IMT 2030 approvals on recommendations. And as you can see here in the Resolution 56, and that also goes for 65, we have the reference to the vision recommendation. So that will be a key document to conclude before the WRC 23 and the radio assembly. Here we have the agenda items that are relevant to IMT. They are in green here. And these are the green ones are the ones, the agenda items where Working Party 5D is either responsible or contributing group. I will go through the four first one, the agenda items 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and 1.5. This describes the timeline that Working Party 5D has been working on since we got the task in CPM in CPM 23.1 to work on these areas, these agenda items. First, we did 1.5 years on studying the characteristics, the protection criteria, and propagation models, and also some spectrum needs. That was concluded in mid-2021, and since then we have been working a little bit more than 1 year on the sharing studies and developing the CPM text. That has now been submitted and will be considered in the CPM 23-2 in March, and we have now on the website the draft CPM report from the director. So what I will go through quite quickly, is the agenda items that I mentioned. And in Ericsson, we have tried to consolidate the CPM report, the draft CPM report, with the different agenda items and the methods. And I can tell you it's not an easy task to do that. This is not an official document, it's just some considerations and trying to summarize the situation. And I hope it can be beneficial for all of you to look on this material afterwards. We start with agenda item 1.1. That's the 4800 to 4990. There are already 42 countries in all 3 regions that has identified this to IMT, and we hope that this can be further considered by some additional countries. But it depends on the outcome. We have a number of methods here that will consider the PFD limit that is quite restrictive, and also the list of exemption countries in this agenda item that is quite controversial and new. Agenda item 1.2, we have here a number of frequency bands. And as was mentioned earlier, for the only really truly global band of this is the 7025 to 7125. But there are other frequency bands that might be of interest for some other countries as well, outside of the regional agenda items that is being discussed. If we start with this one, it's done. From an India perspective, this is done, so I will skip this one. This is also done, being a part of agenda item 1.2. And then we come to the 3600 to 3800 megahertz band, which is an agenda item for region 2, but it could be considered, and there are a number of methods here that I have highlighted that might be of interest for India. Then we come to the 6425 to 7125. These is divided into 2 segments, the lower part being for region 1, and the upper part is the global band, as mentioned. Here there might be some considerations for India as well, even though not being in region 1. And there are 3 methods here I highlighted which might be of interest for India. Then it is 10 to 10.5, also for region 2. But if possible, India have a mobile allocation, but there might be some interest to look into this with the 2 methods I have highlighted here. We have agenda item 1.3, which is the primary allocation then of the band 3600 to 3800. And this, I think, is done from an India perspective, already having a mobile allocation here. We have agenda item 1.4, which is about HAPS being HIBS, and all the frequency ranges up to 2.7 gigahertz. Here there is the highlighted the frequency bands, and they are available in India. And the question then is if it's an interest to identify these also for HIBS. And this is 2 additional bands in the same agenda item to be considered. And then we have agenda item 1.5. This is the UHF band, 470 to 698 megahertz in principle, with the very, very complex situation. This is the methods India already have, and the whole region 3 have a mobile allocation. These I've highlighted here two methods to be considered, since India already have licensed this band, or parts of this band. There's a need to look into the ranges here, the frequency ranges in these two methods. And then also it's clear that probably the resolution connected to this will need to be suppressed. To summarize, we have a new name that has been agreed in Working Party 5D, closing plenary in October, and that on IMT 2030 being resolution 56. The IMT new vision recommendation needs to be approved in study group 5. I will come back to that in my presentation later in the afternoon. And there is then also a need to conclude on the two resolutions in the radio assembly on 56 and 65. All IMT-related CPM texts has been agreed, and they are submitted and included in the draft CPM report. There are several of these CPM texts that are quite complex, as you have seen, and I'm convinced that there will be further discussions, and especially then on the alternatives and on the views under each method. Maybe the method itself is fairly stable, but the alternatives and views will have to be considered further. And that is in the CPM meeting in March and April. Thank you very much for listening.
To the CPM report and has brought out the complexities and what are the opportunities and challenges for the mid-band as well as the lower band for the coming WRC. So with this, we come to the conclusion of this session, and I must thank all the speakers to contributing to this session, and Dr. V who has contributed remotely. And we have got a picture of what is in store for the next next year, 2023, where WRC, it will be culminating in WRC 23 in November. So before that we have APG, we have CPM2. So both are opportunities for us and our industry to deliberate on the spectrum needs, and we have to, considering the complexity of the different methods identified in the CPM, we will have to work out a strategy for finding out additional spectrum and for IMT. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for all the wonderful presentations we had in this session. As I request Session Chair, Shri Vijay Kistrofer, to kindly do the honors of presenting a small token of gratitude, a memento to all our eminent speakers. We begin with presenting to Shri Jitendra Singh, Vice President IAFI and Senior Director Qualcomm. Mr. Christopher to kindly do the honors, sir. Thank you very much indeed. We present to Shri Sachin Kumar. We present to Dr. Olson. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful presentation. And I would now request Mr. Bhatia, President IAFI, to do the honors of presenting to our Session Chair, Shri Vijay Kistrofer. Thank you, sir, for doing the honors. May I request for a group photograph? Mr. Bhatia, can you please join the group photograph? And ladies and gentlemen, with that, we close the proceedings of this session. We now break for lunch. The lunch break will end at 2:30. The next session will commence sharp at 2:30. We would request everybody to be seated before that. And also for all our eminent speakers of the upcoming session, we would request you to kindly load your presentations with us before